Right, okay, so here we are with the Alpha Wolf, and the little valve cover arrived, and I've got to say it is really nice actually. It's a lot more than just a valve cover, I suppose. They've done a good job of it. PRS Engineering, I think, made this for them. Aluminium alloy, I think it is anyway. The little magnet in the bottom, don't know if you can see that. And it's quite long because the filler valve sits quite deep in the stock. So pops in, magnetic, going nowhere, still protrudes enough so you can grab hold of it with your fingers and take it off when you want to charge the rifle. Nifty, nice, finishes the rifle off, looks good. Should have come with the gun, but I've already discussed that. So with that on, I've got to say that I can't find anything to moan about with this rifle. And I am a moaning mini, or a moaning old git, and I just can't find anything to complain about, which isn't like me. Normally, I think almost everything that I've ever had, air rifle wise, I've always found something to complain about. But this is, I just can't find anything now. I really can't. It does what it does. It is what it is, and it does what it does well, and it is what it is without any faults that I can see. Alright, personal taste. People may not like it, may not like the looks of it, may not like electronic rifles, but as an electronic rifle, and as the way it looks, it does it all perfectly. There are no faults with it. There's nothing that it needs to have as standard. There's nothing that it's got that is substandard. It's just great. Now I know that you can kit these things out with all sorts of extra bits and bobs from PRS, and but this one, the Alpha Wolf, unlike the Delta Wolf, in all fairness, really isn't really needing anything. The scope rail issue that you had on the Delta Wolf, where you only had a little scope rail that was under here, and an extended rail was really useful. Likewise the Ghost. On this rifle has been solved because the Picatinny rail's well forward, so you don't need one of those. The cheek piece on this is already raised, unlike on the Delta Wolf and the Ghost. So you don't really need to buy an adjustable cheek piece because it's already raised to a sufficient height to use any sort of scope with this rail. So that's sorted. Now you can of course buy the adjustable butt pad that I've seen on the Daystate PRS thing as a recommended accessory. Now I had one of those for my Delta Wolf, and I have to say that it was a very short-lived accessory. So I had it on there for a while, maybe a couple of weeks, and then I took it off and got rid of it, sold it. And the reason for that was that whilst those multi-adjustable butt pads may be great for sitting at a bench rest shooting, or target shooting down a club where you just sat at a table shooting away from the same position, when it comes to field work and you're wandering around and you've got to take shots high up, low down, maybe leaning against something, sitting down, whatever, and you want to take shots quickly as well, so you want to get onto target quickly and take that shot, all those little adjusters and things and hooks and things that stick off them that make them so comfortable in a sit position are a massive disadvantage in the hunting field. And that's why, if you look at all hunting rifles, full bores, rimfires, whatever, shotguns, all of them have a fairly simple basic butt pad. You only see those more complicated butts on rifles specifically designed for target shooting, because you're using them in the same position all the time. So you get the hooks and everything fitted perfectly around your armpits. and you shoot that rifle in the same position all the time. For bench rest, you'll be sitting at it shooting down on the bench. Target shooting, you'll be either stood up or you'll be sat down. So they're great for that, but for hunting, they're no good. They're an encumbrance. I used to find that I'd get caught in my jacket, faffing about, wasn't comfortable for high shots or whatever. So that was very short-lived for me. So this rifle will definitely not be having another one of those. Because not only are they expensive, but if you're using your rifle for hunting, you will find that most of the time it will be sat in its box and you won't be using it. You'll just use the plain, straightforward, slightly curved butt pad that's already fitted to the rifle. Perfectly adequate, does the job well. It's fine. Doesn't need anything else. So this gun really, straight out of the box, doesn't really need any accessories apart from the little valve cover that I bought. Other than that, this gun out of the box is fine. It needs nothing. It doesn't need adjustable butt, doesn't need a razor for the rail, doesn't need an extended Picatinny thing for the front. It's pretty much absolutely spot on as it is. Lovely, lovely gun. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to zero this in properly, get this properly zeroed in, and then tonight, if it stops snowing, because it's currently still snowing, yeah, it's snowing outside. So if the snow stops tonight, I'll probably take this out and do some night shooting with it. Now I know I said I wasn't going to use this specifically for night shooting, but the place that I'm intending to go tonight is fairly straightforward. Nice flat paddocks, no barbed wire, wooden fences. So I know I can lean on them safely without scratching anything. And it's a nice gun-friendly environment to go shooting in, really. So I'm going to do that tonight if it stops snowing. If it keeps snowing, I don't want to bother, because frankly it's just too cold and horrible and miserable. So yeah, so I want to zero this in, get it spot on, and then go out tonight. So I'll do I'll add on the end of this video now, at the end of this, I'll show you the shots through the Wraith, so give you an idea of how accurate this thing is. These are going to be at just over 22 yards, so it's very short range. I am expecting single pellet hole, 4-hole mag virtually. So it should do that, hopefully. I'm also going to try this doubled magazine thing, where you get them. So I've got 2 mags now, because I've got a 177 mag for my Ghost and a 177 mag for this. I can double up the capacity. So I'm going to put that on as well later, and we'll show you that. Right, I've just put the first initial 10 shots through that rifle, through my new Alpha Wolf, and I was just about to start cursing Daystate to the ends of the earth, because the groups I got were about that big at 22 yards. As you can imagine, less than happy. But it just goes to show how really you need to take your time with things and do a bit of minor analysis to check things out. So I thought it can't be right, that cannot be right with a gun of this quality. Especially out as how, because of the onboard chronograph, I could see that the variation in shots was minuscule, a couple of feet per second, which is nothing. And then when I checked the rifle over, I discovered that the scope rail, whilst I'd screwed the Wraith on nice and tight, the rail that slides up and down, the actual scope rail that slides up and down, so you can position it for eye relief, I hadn't tightened them up, or rather they weren't tightened up from the factory. And every time I was moving the rifle, the Wraith was actually sliding up and down the rail only a tiny bit, and moving from side to side a tiny bit because it wasn't tightened up. A bit infuriating. I feel like a bit of a prat. Should check it over, but it just goes to show, if you get a new rifle, first thing you should do is make sure that everything is nice and tight. Make sure the stock's nice and tight. Make sure the scope rail's nice and tight. Elementary really, my fault. So I tightened that up, tightened it up nice and tight, not too tight obviously, you don't want to grolly it, but tightened it up so it wasn't moving. And then got one hole group, which I'll show you in a minute. Slightly extended one hole groups because I was still fiddling about slightly and giving the Wraith minuscule little changes on the zeroing. So happy as Larry now, thank heavens for that. It just goes to show though how quick you can jump to a conclusion.